Hey guys, so I just wanted to take a second to make a quick video about factoring. In this section, all of factoring will be an A of 1. And so you'll see as we get started on the video that A will be 1. This is something that I showed you guys in class, but if you don't have me in class or you weren't there that particular day or whatever the case may be, I would pause the video right now and get all of this written down because I'm going to reference it quite a bit. So take a second, pause the video, get all this written down, or just print the notes off from D2L. But either way, get this stuff in your notes. I would even put the box in the bottom right hand corner that's highlighted. I would put that and this thing on the left on a sticky note so that as you're going through the homework, you have something to reference over and over again. So pause, write this down, and then we'll pick back up on example 1. So also something to make note, every single one of these you can check by FOIL or box method, whichever one you liked more. Before you turn this test in, you'll know exactly if you got a 100 or not. So example 1 says x squared plus 11x plus 28. So the first step said to check for a GCF. Now, I don't have a GCF between x squared, 11x, and 28. There's no number that I can pull out, and there's no x because not every single term has an x. So because of that, there is no GCF, so I can go straight to factoring. So first thing I'm going to want to write down is a, b, and c. Well, a is the number in front of x squared, b is the number in front of x, and then c, of course, is the constant. So a is 1, b is 11, and c is 28. In this specific section, every single a will be 1. If you don't have a equal to 1, that probably is your clue that there's a GCF to factor out. So I'm going to fill in the x. Then the x I just use to kind of keep things organized. So on top is always going to be a times c, which will give me 28, and then b will go on the bottom. So with this, I'm going to list off all the numbers that will multiply to 28. So multiply to 28, and it's always going to multiply to a times c. Well, I've got 1 and 28. Always start with 1 in the number because I see that one get forgotten a lot. Then I'm just going to go through the list. So I'm then going to go to 2. Well, 2 times what gives me 28? 14. I'm then going to go to 3. Well, when I type that into my calculator, it gives me a decimal, so I skip it. I'm going to go to 4. And so it's going to give me 4 and 7. I'm going to go to 5. 28 divided by 5 gives me a decimal, so I skip it. 28 divided by 6 gives me a decimal, so I skip it. And then I'm back to 28 divided by 7. And once I start to loop back over, then they're just going to repeat. 7 times 4, 14 times 2, 28 times 1. I don't need to write these things down, so I'm done. Now I'm looking at which two of those will get me to 11. Well, we wrote down in that box that I highlighted and I said to put this on a sticky note. If a times c is positive, they're both going to be the same sign and they're both going to be the sign of b. And so in this case, a times c is positive and b is positive, so I'm going to have both of my factors are going to be positive, which is going to give me 4 and 7 as my factors. The shortcut for this is then in your parentheses, I'm going to have x and x because that is my variable. X squared will give me x times x. And then I'm going to have the two numbers I just found, plus 4 and plus 7. Now, I'm only going to check in this first example, but just to remind you, to check, you are going to FOIL x plus 4 times x plus 7, or do box method, whichever one you prefer. So x times x is going to give me x squared. Outer x times 7 is going to give me 7x. Inner x times 4 is going to give me 4x, and then 4 times 7 is going to give me 28. And then, of course, I will combine like terms. And so, because when I FOILed it, I got back to my question, because those two things were the same, I can say, yes, I got it right. And so this would be my final answer, x plus 4, x plus 7. Order doesn't matter. If you do x plus 7 times x plus 4, it is good to go. Okay, here's my second example. So my second example says x squared minus 3x minus 40. I don't have a GCF, so I go straight to A, B, and C. So A is the number in front, which will be a 1. B is the number in front of x squared, which is a negative 3. And C is the number in the back, or the constant. So I'm going to multiply A times C, which is going to give me negative 40, and then B, which is negative 3. So because A times C is negative, we wrote down that that means my signs are going to be opposite. And we will talk about how to determine which one's going to be positive and which one's going to be negative of my factors after we find the two numbers. And so I'm listing off all the numbers that multiply to 40. So I start with 1 in the number, 1 times 40, and then I'm going to go to 2. 2 times 20. Well, when I do 40 divided by 3, it gives me decimal, so I skip it. 4 times 10, 5 times 8, 6 decimal, skip it, 7 decimal, skip it, and then I start to repeat. 8 times 5, 10 times 4, and so on. So now I'm looking at those numbers, and I see the two that could get me to 3, would be 5 and 8. Now, how do I determine which one's going to be positive, which one's going to be negative? Well, again, we wrote down in that yellow highlighted box that if the signs are opposite, the bigger number is going to match the sign of B. So B is negative, so the bigger number, for my case, 8, has to match that sign. And so I'm going to have negative 8 and positive 5. Order doesn't matter. So whether you have negative 8 written first and positive 5 second, all that matters is that the signs and the numbers are correct. You can check it and say positive 5 times negative 8 does multiply to negative 40. Positive 5 times negative 8 does add to negative 3. And so my factors are going to be x and x, because it's x squared, and it will be positive 5 and negative 8. Again, just like before, which we're not going to take time to do this, but to check this, you would FOIL x plus 5 and x minus 8. You would FOIL those out, and then if you got the question, which you would, if you got the question, you know you got it correct. And so that would be my final answer. Okay, the next one, a word problem, which I know is everybody's favorite, so I wanted to take some time to put it in the video. The area of a rectangle is given by this function, a of a, which just means it's a function in variable a squared plus 13a plus 36. If the width is a plus 4, what is the length? So I went ahead and drew a picture. I've got my width over here as a plus 4, and then of course they asked me what is the length. Because we don't know how to solve it, we cannot actually find what a equals. You will learn that in Math 102. All we're looking for is what can I multiply a times 4 by to get the area. So because area is length times width, I can go ahead and say, well, I know a plus 4 is going to be one of the factors. I'm looking for the other factor. So of this is the thing I'm factoring. A, B, and C. A is 1, B is 13, and C is 36. So I'm going to fill in my triangle, or my X. A times C is 36, and B is 13. So what I'm doing is I'm going to list off all the factors of 36. So everything that multiplies to 36. So I've got 1 and 36, and then 2 and 18, and then 3 and 12, 4 and 9, and then of course 6 and 6. And so of those two, which two will get me to 13? Well, 4 and 9. Because everything is positive, my two factors are going to be positive 4, positive 9. And by everything being positive, I mean because this A times C is positive and B is positive, I know that positive 4 and positive 9. Well, they gave me one factor of A plus 4. And so all I need, A plus 4 is the width, which came from that one. The width is A plus 4. The length, which is the unknown, would be A plus 9. And so A plus 9 would be the length, and that's what I'm actually looking for. Okay, the last example is just one that looks a little complicated, but it's really just a little bit, it looks trickier than it is. So example 4 says 7w to the fourth minus 28w to the third minus 84w squared. So I went ahead and wrote a note over here to make sure that you notice this has a GCF. I see that every single one of those numbers can be divided by 7. Also, so let's talk back through that. 7, negative 28, and negative 84 all can divide 7. So that means part of my GCF is going to have a 7. But also, w to the fourth, w to the third, and w squared all have a w squared in common. And so not only can I take out a 7, but I can also take out a w squared. So once I factor out that 7w squared, I'm looking at the first term. So the first term is 7w to the fourth. Well, 7 divided by 7 is going to give me 1. W to the fourth divided by w squared is going to give me w squared. My second term, negative 28w to the third, divide out 7w squared. So negative 28 divided by 7 is going to give me negative 4. And then w to the third, divide out w squared is going to give me w. Negative 84 w squared. Negative 84 divide out a 7 is going to give me negative 12. W squared divide out w squared is going to give me 1. So I just have negative 12. So now this part I'm going to factor, and then that GCF is really just going to drop down. So I'll have 7w squared drop down in front of my answer. So once you factor out a GCF, you're going to then factor the parenthesis, whatever is left, and then the GCF is just going to be out front. So I've got A, B, and C. Well, A is in front of w squared, which is 1. B is in front of w, negative 4, and C is the constant, negative 12. So I'm going to have A times C on top, B on the bottom. Well, because A times C is negative, that means my signs are going to be opposite. So I'm listing off everything that multiplies to 12. So I've got 1 and 12, 2 and 6, and 3 and 4. So which two of those will get me to a 4? Well, 2 and 6. Of course, now I have to figure out which one's going to be positive, which one's going to be negative. We wrote down earlier that the bigger number was going to take the same sign as B. And so in this case, 6 is going to match the sign of B. So I'm going to have negative 6, positive 2. Make sure you check that. 2 times negative 6 gives me negative 12. 2 plus negative 6 gives me negative 4. And so I'm good there. So my two factors will be W plus 2, and then the second one will be W minus 6. If you wanted to check this one looks a little bit different, but to check it, you would have to FOIL W plus 2, W minus 6. And so I'll take a second to do that. W times W is going to be W squared. W times negative 6, negative 6W. 2 times W will be 2W. And then 2 times negative 6 will be negative 12. So I FOILed that. Go ahead and combine up my like terms. And then I would have to distribute the GCF. And so this one is a little weird because it does have that 7W squared outside. So I would have to distribute that to the part I just FOILed, which would give me 7W to the 4th. 7 times negative 4W would give me negative 28W to the 3rd. And then 7W times negative 12 would give me negative 84W squared. And so that one is a little bit weird to check, but certainly you can kind of see the process there. So hopefully this helps, but as always, if you have questions, let me know.